I'm going to start without fixing that problem brief right now. This will be later, available later to view for members of my family. I understand there's a 10-second delay between when I speak and when it actually broadcast, which suggests they're afraid that I was let loose with extreme expletives. I don't intend to do that. I'm Jim Dunaway. I'm the interim head of school at Manlius Pebble Hill. Is it not? This is not okay. I don't want to do like a rock singer. Good, thank you. I'm Jim Dunaway, and I'm the interim head at Manlius Pebble Hill School. I'm grateful to all of you for being here tonight, and I think this will be worth your while. Two things happened to me in the fall of 1955. I know that's prehistory for many of you. Two important things happened to me then. I fell in love with baseball, and admittedly, more significant, I started school, which in those days in small town Georgia meant first grade, no kindergarten in those days. In those pre-Sesame Street days, I had not yet learned to read, though my grandmother had taught me a couple of letters of the alphabet. At her kitchen table, I would pore over the pages of the local newspaper, laboriously, pre-handwritten, laboriously drawing a circle around every R and S I could find. I don't know why she chose those particular letters, but when I got to Miss Rookies' class at Montesano Elementary School, I was excited to find them, R and S, side by side like buddies. Among other unfamiliar letters tacked above the blackboard on two sides of the room. The first word we learned was the word look, which was two O's looking like eyes peering back at me from a mirror. It was a sort of reminder that its sound and its meaning and its look were all related to each other. The thrill of learning something new has remained with me, as has my love of baseball, which I've always associated with this time of year, the same way school has defined my Septembers for those 60 years. So it would be fair to say that for 60 years, education has been my life. Though I was raised by parents who didn't attend college, I was a full-time student until I was 30 years old. Along the way, earning a couple of graduate degrees, while also teaching both undergraduate and graduate courses. Always taking for granted, once I gave up my adolescent dream of being a baseball player, that I would be a college professor. Then, though it began as a temporary gig, I spent 35 very full and fulfilling years as a teacher, coach, and administrator in two great independent schools. One, a boarding school in New England, grades 9 through 12, the other a pre-kindergarten through 12th grade day school in Houston, Texas. Last summer, I left my position in Houston to move to Syracuse and rejoin my wife and daughter, who already had settled at Syracuse University, one and MPH the other. This past fall was the first September in those 60 years I was not in school. It felt very strange. Though my wife tells me she knew all along I would return to my first vocational love, in October I began a new position at Syracuse University, assuming my career in independent schools was done. The lesson in there is never predict your future. This evening I want to say a few things about my general educational vision, as well as my vision for Manlius Pebble Hill School. I'm aware of the hour and of what usually is going on in families this time of night, so I'll try not to go too long, and I'll leave some time at the end for questions. I was a language major in college. In addition to a couple of modern languages, I studied Greek and Hebrew and Latin, so you'll indulge me if I start by pointing out that the word education, the English word education, comes from a Latin root whose meaning is to lead. Its uses in surviving Latin texts are extraordinarily rich for understanding the nuances of its English derivatives. For the sake of time, I'm just going to mention one of those. The Latin word educare is sometimes used to refer to taking a ship from a safe haven into deeper water. Used that way suggests that a teacher's task is to lead children from calm and protected waters into the open ocean. The wide and stormy sea of new ideas and concepts and perspectives, through which they will sail to worlds they never imagined from the calm of that safe harbor where they began. It makes me think of, and I'm sure many of you will recognize this, it makes me think of coaxing a child from the shallow end of a swimming pool to where the water is a little deeper, then deeper still, then finally to where little feet can't touch the bottom of the pool, and where other resources, notably in this case swimming, for example, become necessary. Above all else, it seems to me, education consists of escorting or accompanying children through change, from one state of being to another, from one frame of mind to another, from one view of the world to another, from one understanding of oneself to another understanding, or several understandings, from one conception of the natural world to another. For the most part, these changes are gradual, though experience tells us they are punctuated by sudden, sometimes rather radical shifts in understanding. Sometimes we see the change immediately, while other changes become apparent only with time. To help students undergo those changes, it's the teacher's task, in fact, the teacher's responsibility, to discomfort students, to make them uneasy, to break, though gently, their attachment to easy assumptions and ideas, to pull the carpet from under their feet, so to speak. Not for the sake of making them uncomfortable, but because discomfort is necessary for breaking through to new things. Thus, while education orients us, helps students find their bearings, at the same time it disorients. It connects us to the past in the same way it calls the past into question. It disorients parents too, by the way, when their children struggle with new ideas. But part of our job as parents is to help them through them. I should add that this progress, and it is progress, comes not just from the routine of lectures, discussions, readings, rehearsals, athletic practices, problem sets, lab reports, tests, and papers, but from a variety of unpredictable moments, which arrive a little like grace, though sometimes painful grace. Though I won the mathematics prize in my senior year of high school, I honestly can't recall a single math test I took in all high school. In fact, as I think about it, I can't remember any test I took in high school. But I do remember vividly two things that Mr. Howe, who was my math teacher twice and my baseball coach, taught me when he rightly kicked the ninth grade me off his team for something I said to an opposing player. I will not repeat what I said. That's what the 10-second delay is for. When the next day, barely holding back my tears with my uniform in my hand, hanging on a hanger with that plastic bag you get at the cleaner, I found him in his classroom. He spoke very kindly to me, assuring me it was not the end of the world. And over the next 3 years, he gave me ample opportunity to redeem myself, to show I was gradually leaving that immature self behind. He hired me as his official scorekeeper for all varsity basketball games, and it was he who gave me that senior math award. He taught me first accountability, and then redemption. And both of those are more important than quadratic equation, derivatives, or FLX. I don't even remember what FLX means. I would not for a moment want to downplay what your son learns with calculus or Chinese or Chaucer, or how your daughter does on her SATs or Aspire tests. But education extends far beyond these things and is far more complex and unpredictable. This is all the more true in a school like NPH, where we stress both academic and personal growth, where your son's or daughter's chances of establishing meaningful relationships with teachers are greater by far than mine were in a large public high school. Mr. Houck was not unique, but Mr. Houck was most unusual. At NPH, there are lots of Mr. and Ms. Houcks, and your child's experience is all the richer for that. This is one of the things I want to emphasize tonight. Schools often provide a variety of what I call pretend risks. That is, risks that carry a guarantee of success. That may look good on college applications, but it doesn't prepare young people for college, or for life. And MPH is in the business of doing both of those things. I'm not talking about putting children in danger, but about giving them authentic opportunities to cope with both the success and failure that come with genuine risks. If you ask yourself, which has taught you more, your failures or your successes? I suspect you may find it has been the failures. I think of Nader Vasugi, now a professor of architecture in New York, who was my philosophy student some years ago. In the spring of his senior year, instead of taking a break the way some seniors do, he came out for track, which I coached and which he had not tried before. I'm sure it was clear to Nader, who was not much of an athlete, that he would not be as exceptional a runner as he was a philosophy student. He knew he could fail. And in fact, by normal standards, you might say he did. But he gained immeasurably. We see this at MPH. When students stretch themselves and take a course that's outside their comfort zone, audition for a play or musical when they have stage fright, or don't possess a Broadway voice. When they set forth a hypothesis for their STEM project that may turn out to be incorrect, more on that later, raise their hand to answer a question when they're not entirely sure of the answer, even venture to befriend someone on the playground who's outside their comfortable circle of friends. Those are all risks. Many of the most important successes in life come after a series of failures. I remember a quotation I think we made from Thomas Edison about the reason he had success because he failed so many times first. So part of MPH's task is to help your son or daughter take genuine risks. If they succeed, great. They often do. But if they fail, you will be there when they pick themselves up, dust themselves off, get on their feet again. The way Mr. Houck picked me up after he picked me off his baseball team. I want to hone in now exclusively on education at MPH, and I want to do this by focusing on a simple phrase that has been, for some reason, echoing in my head for some time. When my wife and I talk about the value or the impact that independent schools have had on our two children, including MPH, the words that come to mind most often are that these schools have made a world of difference. I know that reverberates for many of you as well. Recently, a number of MPH parents and grandparents used similar language when they responded to an email asking them to spread the good word about MPH. We just asked them to tell some of their friends about MPH. Here are some of the things that they emailed back. This was unsolicited, and I want to quote from just a few of them, and I'm going to omit their students, their children's names. We love what the school has done for our daughter and want it to flourish in the future. My son is in 9th grade, and I'm always singing MPH's praises, exclamation. My kids have been students at MPH for several years, and the change in both boys has been profound. They are growing into confident, socially able, and well-educated young men, and I give MPH its share of credit for this. This person goes on to say, one of my good friends moved his daughter to MPH this year. She has thrived at the school. We have absolutely loved the school for our daughter. It is truly a unique place and has defined her to her core in a very positive way. We love MPH and are committed to it. We have seen our daughter flourish in every way each year she has attended. And here's one more excerpt from an email that I got late Saturday evening when I was struggling over what to say tonight. It comes from parents of a kindergarten student, a couple I've never met, who are unable to be here tonight. And here's part of what it said. We have enjoyed following along with the kindergarten this year as our daughter has brought samples of her work home, and we've been bowled over as she plays teacher to us with lessons on symmetry, animal behavior, musical rhythm, number lines, and more. I also don't know what number lines are. We have been delighted by the artwork that she has shown us, including a beautiful watercolor we shall be framing now that it is no longer hanging in the Center for Early Learning. We are grateful for every interaction that our daughter has had with her MPH teachers. what is, to me, an inspiring endorsement of our lower school, our pre-K and K classes. It's an indirect illustration of the difference that small classes make in a school like this. Without question, for these parents and their students, MPH has made a world of difference. As I thought about that phrase, a world of difference, I see that it means more than first came to my mind. Take the word world. MPH prepares students for the world, we say that. One meaning of the word here simply is life. Whatever follows school and college, the world, the real world. Those of you whose children attended lower school at MPH understand why I say that by the time my children finished lower school, they had developed intellectual curiosity, a passion for learning, the ability to speak in public, to collaborate with others on projects, looked adults in the eye when they spoke to them, wrote pretty sophisticated prose for fourth graders, and showed the beginnings of creative and critical thought, questioning what they were told and developing their own perspective on things. Definitely questioning what they were told. This morning I happened to visit the Center for Early Learning, and it was just striking to me that the children came up to me one at a time, looked me in the eye, immediately reached out their hands and told me their names. Any independent school you go to, that's sort of in the DNA. My wife and I agree that, knowing what we know now, had we been able to send our children to only one division in an independent school, lower, middle, or upper, it would be lower. I hear parents all the time say that we told them to wait to upper, and lots of reasons for doing that. And of course, it's not because my children didn't have a great middle or upper school experience. They did. They are. But because after the incredible foundation they got in lower school, they would have thrived in just about any school they attended. But apologies to any public school teachers in the audience. I simply do not believe my children could have gotten that in those public schools. Even good ones, and we have good ones here, where classes are larger, teachers are bound to fairly rigid curricula. They cannot easily depart from a lesson plan to delve into something that they or their students find particularly interesting. And they must teach to frequent standardized tests that often sort of tyrannize their curriculum. I'm not making this up. In my years in independent schools, 35 years, I've interviewed literally thousands of teachers over the course of that time. And the public school teachers among them, many of them excellent teachers, many of them I hired. They've repeated these themes over and over and over. And why do I mention the particular skills I said my children have gained in lower school? Because they're the very ones that prepare students, not just for middle school and high school, but for whatever they will do in their post-school lives. These are skills that are transferable to any situation. They make a world of difference. There's a second sense of the word world there that's relevant here. It can also refer to the broader world, the ever-shrinking globe we inhabit with several billion other people and even more other creatures than that. Our children will not experience that globe the same way we do. My grandmother, who was born in 1890, hard to believe that, never traveled beyond the states of Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. My parents, born in the early 20s, never left continental North America. My wife and I, who were baby boomers, have traveled in Europe, Asia, and Africa, but we've never lived or worked in any of those places. Some of you were born outside the United States, and others have lived, been educated, or done business there. But our children will do so in much greater numbers and to a much greater extent. For the first time in our history, we face global environmental threats that know no national boundaries. And millions of people feel unsafe on their own soil. Never has it been more important for education to include exposure to other cultures, other languages, other ways of understanding the broader world, and exposure to political, social, and environmental threats that can't be solved without knowledge of these things. When I studied French and German in college, there was something kind of quaint about knowing a foreign language. You read a little Camus or Goethe, and you kind of hope to take a trip to Paris or Cologne someday, but still your education was not international in scope or focus. But that was simply not necessary at that time in an educated person. especially in the United States. All that has changed. Now an MPH student can choose not only from French, and Spanish, and Latin. I understand Latin's not a modern language, but they can choose from that. But also from Mandarin Chinese. And as an aside, yes, next year we all will offer Mandarin Chinese at advanced levels for students who've already learned Chinese. But they can also study through our online courses. They can study Arabic, one of the languages most spoken in the world. These students may someday major in East Asian studies. Some will go on to international business and law. Many will travel extensively and live abroad. If you add to that the fact that our upper school students sit side by side in school every day with international students, and you can see the richness and the reason for international exposure here. So we've emphasized things like Model United Nations, which has a remarkable history of success in MPH, up to and including the current year. And not only does it have a remarkable history, it's inspired more than a couple of students, including my own child, to study international relations in college. One MPH teacher started an international guest lecture series in her world history class. Ask yourself if this was possible when you were in school. Her students this year spoke via Skype with attorneys in Pakistan, with a U.S. diplomat in Nigeria during the Ebola outbreak. Later, they will hear a Palestinian speak about youth programs involving Israeli and Palestinian youth. I honestly don't know where else in the area children would have this sort of combination of opportunities. And I want us to take greater advantage of these at all levels, to look for more opportunities for study and service trips abroad, to learn in more intentional ways from MPH students themselves and parents who have international backgrounds and experience. Perhaps to hold an annual international festival, Culture Fest, so our children can teach and learn about various countries and cultures and cuisines. I'd like for us to expand our curriculum to include an ever greater, even greater, more sophisticated international outlook. And we're looking for ways to increase the number of countries represented in our international student body. We're not an international school, but now more than ever we believe that education that authentically exposes students to the globe on which they will live, a world in many ways not bound by national borders, is necessary. MPH needs to make a world of difference. I mentioned students taking Arabic, so I want to pause here and just point out that using our Malone online classroom, among the courses, not all the courses, but among the courses students can take this coming year include bioethics, philosophy, genetics and genomics, the American food system, and Roman comedy. There's a range of courses for you. But back to that phrase, a world of difference. What about that other word, difference? I can think of two ways in which it defines our school. Just take a short walk around campus, and it immediately reveals the diversity of our student body and faculty, who represent a host of cultures, ethnicities, and though not necessarily so obvious, religious traditions. At MPH, it's safe to be different. I worked for the past 15 years in one of the best independent schools in the country by all measures, where the students were in many ways just like MPH students. As great as that school is, though, it was not easy there for students to take an unpopular political or social view or to openly struggle with identity issues that cut against the grain. Such a student would not have felt safe. Those students were likely to keep their identities and their views to themselves and perhaps a very small group of trusted friends. At MPH, there is far greater acceptance, I would say even celebration, of differences. Nothing is more important, in my opinion, than for students to feel safe. Obviously physically, but also safe to explore openly their differences, their commonalities. Everyone benefits from the differences among us. While I'm talking about difference, let me refer briefly to an article by Patrick Bassett, who is the past president of the National Association of Independent Schools, to which the school belongs. Bassett points out that compared to students in privileged suburban public schools, and we have some here, They're privileged suburban public schools. Compared to that, students in independent schools are more than 3 times as likely to participate in a sport, to take part in arts programs such as theater, orchestra, band, and choir, and to engage in community service. At MPH, the habit of doing those things begins early and continues through all grade levels. When I was in the pre-K building today, the students, the first thing they said to me was that they had played violins today. And I think of the remarkable performance of cabaret my family and I attended on Friday evening. I have seen many student performances, theater performances, and this ranks with the very best I've seen. The leads were absolutely as strong as any I've seen. I taught 2 students who did theater in high school who were on successful film careers. So, those are just the leads. Cast and crew did a magnificent job. I hope you saw it. Why do I mention this? Because, as Patrick Bassett says, and I'm quoting you, the greatest predictor of success in college and thereafter is not grades or SATs, but involvement in extracurricular life, where the life skills of playing fair, being a team player, winning and losing gracefully, performing in front of an audience, etc., are developed and nurtured. I got to repeat that because it's important. It's true. The greatest predictor of success in college and thereafter is not grades or SAT scores, but involvement in extracurricular life, where the life skills of playing fair, being a team player, winning and losing gracefully, performing in front of an audience, etc., are developed and nurtured. What do you think about that? I am confident that put in the room with 10 random children from all grades, given 30 minutes to speak with them, I can identify the independent school students among them. And MPA students are typical of independent school students. Here's what I mean. A couple of days ago, Friday I think it was, I walked through the cafeteria in this room while middle school students exhibited and described their STEM projects. Some of you may have been with that too that evening. I didn't get to all of that, but I saw enough to illustrate the point I want to make. Almost without exception, they greeted me, they told me their names, they looked me in the eye, they spoke clearly and intelligently about their hypothesis, how they set up an experiment to test it, what the results of the experiment were. A couple of them spoke, and this was particularly impressive to me, about what they learned from a false hypothesis. And what I said about risk. Now, forget the science for a second. Just forget that that's science. And think about the skills those kids were exhibiting. After a few of them, I said to myself, I know I'm in an independent school. I am at MPH. After a few, I said the same thing, by the way. After visiting those Center for Early Learning in 3 lower school classes today, the same school, exactly the same school. 4th graders told me about the research projects they were doing in social studies. And I was, to quote one of the earlier parents I quoted, I was bold. I've been in lots of 4th grade classes. Okay? I've done that for many years, and I was just bold. At some point in the conversation, I'm sorry, I lost my place. After speaking with those 10 students, I recall a conversation I had a few days before with a group of alums at the school from various generations. Some of them were older than I, they were older, some were quite young. And at some point in that hour-long conversation, I had a sudden realization. And it was the same realization that I had in this room when I was talking to those SIM students. I had a realization, these are MPH graduates. They exhibited the same qualities, a little farther down the halfway to life, but they exhibited the same qualities I've seen in those other students. And while I'm generalizing about MPH and independent schools, let me say there's a clear difference between teachers at MPH and those in other kinds of schools. Of course, there are very fine teachers in other schools. But again, having worked in independent schools all these years, and having interviewed literally thousands of teachers from every kind of school and college, I know there are qualities that there are these qualities of independent school teachers and teachers at MPH. And they clearly distinguish them from teachers in other schools. They are the Mr. House. Remember I talked about Mr. House, that high school teacher and coach of mine. They're passionate about they're expert in their subject areas. They're knowledgeable about children's development. They're eager to be engaged with children in the classroom and out of the classroom. They're attuned to intellectual, emotional, and physical well-being of their students. They're dedicated to advancing their own personal and their own professional growth. I've hired, worked with, and observed over 1,000 such teachers. These teachers made a world of difference in their students' lives. That's why you and I put our children in MPH, and that's why I can't imagine my children being anywhere else. And okay, since I mentioned the MPH STEM Fair, I can't resist repeating what I said in my Monday message yesterday. That is that of 31 MPH students who attended the Central New York Science and Engineering Fair on Sunday. That's 31 students in a school of only a little, 400. So a large percentage of students attended. 28 of those 31 students were recognized with an award. Some with more than one award. Several with the highest honors that could be awarded, and one, sophomore Wama Stahl, selected as one of only 2 students in the whole fair from 5 or 6 counties and many schools, public and private. And this student, sophomore at MPH, was one of only 2 students to be invited to attend Intel's International STEM Fair. You'll see all those names, by the way, in a news digest that I think we've already been posted on the web, but will be very shortly. This is now the 4th year in a row that an MPH student was awarded one of the 2 top spots. I call that a trend. And by the way, while I'm talking about this, Science Department Chair Sue Foster told me that when she arrived at that fair on Sunday, a judge pulled her aside. And he told her, I'm quoting now, MPH students to a person have a notably refined ability to engage judges in conversation about their projects. Those judges noticed what I noticed here several days before. That's what I'm talking about. And this will serve them well throughout their lives, whether they pursue science and engineering or something else. And since I mentioned Sue Foster, I can't resist saying our science department head is being honored this spring by the Technology Alliance in Central New York with an Outstanding Teacher Award. We are proud of our students and their teachers. Okay, if we're so great, Mr. Dunaway, are we satisfied? We are proud, but we're not satisfied. Recently, the coach of the Princeton University women's basketball team, when asked how she gets her team up for games week after week after week, said simply that they began each week's practices by asking and identifying how they can get better at it. Now, I have to tell you, this is the team that hasn't lost the game this year. Each week, though, they look to get better. In MPH, I expect the highest standards of excellence in all departments and programs. No school, no institution can be successful simply by repeating the same things about the product they offer. You can't just say the same thing over and over. You have to get better. So we must continually and carefully define what we mean when we say excellence, and push ourselves to demonstrate in measurable ways the things that can be measured. Not everything can be measured, but some things can. AP scores can be measured. College matriculation can be measured. Parent and graduate satisfaction can be measured. I can't stress this enough. In my first meeting with the MPH administrative team a couple of weeks ago, I said I would expect this of everyone at every level. It just goes without saying. This is in no way, I want to emphasize, this is no way a criticism of MPH faculty and staff, just an assertion that every institution succeeds only by changing. In that vein, we already have sought the help of 2 recognized experts in their fields. Tom Moore, who's the Director of Advancement in the MPH School in Houston, Texas, where I used to work. He's an expert, well-known expert in the area of development. He was here last week, meeting with some of our folks. Don Sala, who was former Vice President at Syracuse University in the area of enrollment management, worked with us throughout our early enrollment season, helping us with his expertise. Here are 2 critical areas for us: enrollment and development. And in the area of getting our message out, while we know that parents' praise is always the most effective way to draw new customers, and that's a hint to satisfied parents, the best way to spread the word is is parents telling other parents. But still, we can't count on that alone. We have to be forward-thinking, aggressive, and intentional in shaping and communicating our message about the school. That involves refining, maybe even resetting the message. We've been saying uncommon critical. Is that the positive message we want? Or do we need something better than that? It's more accurate than that. It's more telling. It tells our story better. We want to tell a consistent and convincing story about what we do well. We need to consider expanding our geographical reach beyond the areas we reach now. Should we open a 5-day-a-week home in Syracuse for students from Ithaca so they can commute on the weekends and live there during the week, and that way gain more students? Why not think about it? And we need to reach out in an intentional way to tell our story in a variety of institutions and in a variety of settings. Institutions of higher education, medical facilities, regional corporations, early learning centers, wherever parents of potential MPH students are. We intend to collect more data about how we can do even better. We want to survey MPH graduates in their sophomore year of college to see how well we prepare them for college. We want to survey graduates of all generations to learn how we can serve them better and keep them connected to each other and to engage. And we want to survey our parents to find out whether they're satisfied with the education their children are receiving. We want our teachers to have more opportunities for professional growth. We want to have more and more sophisticated technology for use in the classroom. And I put this last for emphasis. We will always make the quality of the student educational experience our number one priority. Every decision should answer the question, what is best for students? It's no secret that for several years, MPH has been facing a decline in enrollment and a resulting shortfall in revenue. It came to light for many of us in kind of a pretty startling way a few months ago. Because we've raised about $2.3 billion of the $3 billion we set as a goal in the MPH first campaign, because enrollment has surpassed the worst case scenario we rolled out then, it's easy to think of December now as seeming far away from us in some ways. When I heard the news, my thoughts went back to the two great schools I had spent my independent school career. While I was working in these schools, each experienced a crisis that threatened it to its core. One underwent a precipitous decline in enrollment and had to cut faculty and staff, while the other experienced a very public cultural fissure involving divisions between administration and faculty, faculty and parents, parents and administration. I can tell you that as a member of the leadership team in each of those schools, I learned a lot about the lives of institutions, which it turns out are not all that different from the lives of individuals and families. They undergo crises, they often undergo careful re-examination of themselves, and more often than not, they survive. I'm happy to say that both of those schools are very much flourishing today. You may have heard it said that the Chinese word for crisis consists of two characters, one signifying danger, the other opportunity. Well, it turns out that's not true. However, there's still a real sense in which that is precisely what a crisis is. A dangerous situation that, when head on and managed well, also often offers great opportunities. I'm optimistic that we will take advantage of our opportunities. With your trust and support, we will take advantage of the recent crisis to make MPH an even greater school, to make a world of difference in the lives of your children. Thank you. It is 6:51, and I understand that people have lives, and so I want to give time for people to ask questions. And what I'll say is, if at any point you need to leave, don't be embarrassed about that. Or if you have a question you don't want to ask in public, or you don't want to take that risk, then I'll say afterwards, and feel free to ask me anything there. Would you like to ask me a question? Yes.
Where are we at with the teachers? And they're...
Start all over, I'm sorry.
Okay. Where are we at with the teachers and hiring? I love what you're going to say tonight, so I don't want to go over that.
Okay.
It's wonderful. I've seen you on the soccer field next to me, and Now I see him up there on the top.
Okay. The question is, where are we with teachers and hiring teachers?
And it's also like, where they're at with their students, their kids, and where they're hired and if their kids can come back and
Okay. Our teachers, as you know, I think we've offered to a number of our teachers kind of unofficial contract, or about to follow up with official contracts now, to return to school next year. And those numbers were based on the worst case scenario of student enrollment for next year. We are now beyond that worst case scenario, and so I had conversations this very day with the 3 division heads and with the director of admission, and we're ready now to start thinking about hiring some more of those teachers. Some of those teachers, as you know, some of the teachers who are here this year will not be able to return next year because we won't have as many students as we did this year. We're optimistic that we will have more teachers than we have. In fact, we are estimating a fairly large dollar figure that we will be able to put into additional faculty salaries next year. So that's where we are with them. As far as their children, there have been various stories about the tuition remission question. They were originally told would not get tuition remission for their children, but now they're going to get a substantial tuition remission for their children, and a number of them have been able. But those people who have not been offered positions for this year, of course, have not decided. I don't think I should say more than that. I haven't talked to every teacher about what they've decided. We do have over 60 students who are children of faculty and staff. And I've been saying teachers that are also staff.
Could you speak to what the enrollment numbers are today?
I would. The question is, what are enrollment numbers today? We are now projecting the current enrollment numbers suggest that we will have, if we stop right now, well, no, I shouldn't say we stop right now. Given the applications we have and the acceptances that are out there, and the people who are in process, we expect somewhere in the area of 330 students next year. Could go more than that. We're quite early in the admission season. Typically this time of year, there will be people who would not have applied, for example. So, but we are, I think the most optimistic thing is that we're well beyond that worst case scenario, and it's early in the season.
What is the status of lower school? Because sometimes what we heard initially was that the lower school population was parents.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, I will. The question is about lower school. People have heard of lower school. The numbers of lower school are precarious. I'm not sure what that would mean, precarious.
But in other words, that there aren't going to be that many, and there might be 2 blended classrooms, like is there?
There almost certainly will be blended classrooms. Blended classrooms is not a new idea. It's been successfully used in the past and in the present in some places. And we don't quite know which grades will be blended. It will depend on where the numbers are. But the lower school will exist next year. I had an email today from an alum from a long time ago that was a response to my Monday message yesterday, and she said, if you want the school to survive, just get rid of the lower school. That's the big range, and she went on and on and on. So I went back to Mike and said, if you get a chance to attend my talk tonight, you'll hear me give a clear statement about the lower school. I think you've heard my clear statement about the lower school. I think as great as the middle and upper school are, lower school education is more important. And, I think get crucified for saying that the upper school division in the city like but he has children in the lower school. And so the lower school will be there, pre-K will be there. The faculty will be diminished in size, we know that. But we're still enrolling lower school kids. And I have a little sheet of paper that I get around every 3 days. It tells me where we are in enrollment. And by each grade level, I add the number that we've added. I put the number that we've added since last time. There are always a few pluses in there, so we're getting good. Yeah.
What do you think the main differences you're foreseeing right now for next year. What do you think the perceived differences will be for us as parents? Kids return to school?
Well, let me start by saying, I think if you came to NPH noon next year, you wouldn't notice anything in particular. There would be nothing that you would say, this is something odd. You would just say, this is a very good school, 23 and 400, maybe 400 students, I don't know, it's, somewhere in the area. There are lots of schools of that size, and we would function very successfully that way. We expect that we'll be able to offer the courses we offer now by and large. Classes in some cases may be a little smaller. In the lower school, for example, I think if you're a lower school parent, you notice that. I think anything smaller would be better. The attention my children got in small classes in lower school, you can't put a price on that. In the upper school, I think we anticipate, that it's hard to anticipate until we see what courses students have signed up for and how they schedule. I think the biggest challenge we have there is that while students will be able to sign up for all the courses they want, it's possible that in scheduling we may find there are some conflicts. We don't expect that to be a big problem, we just have to wait and see. Otherwise, I'm not anticipating any major changes. Maybe a team or two that we field now won't be big enough to field. There's someone here tonight with a daughter who's playing lacrosse, varsity lacrosse this spring, and we didn't have enough girls out for lacrosse. It's a small school this year, and so they joined the middle high school and they're happily playing lacrosse. On the other hand, we field full teams in many sports this year, so you might notice it there. I don't think you walk in the cafeteria or lunch, you notice any different. I don't think you notice it during class change, in the hallways. And I think if you walk in the individual class, you see exactly what I saw today in lower school and any other class.
I want to first thank you for your optimistic and positive message. It's so refreshing for us to hear that. I can speak on behalf of many people. You've been dealing, as so many of us have been dealing, with an immediate crisis. But I was wondering if you and the leadership team have been thinking about 5 years and 10 years ahead in terms of, first of all, what's the right size for this school? I know we got up close to 600, and it could be that that's actually too big. So about the size, but then also maybe a little bit more details about where you would imagine the school would be placed, say, in 5 years.
It's a good question. Maybe ask where I see the school in five years. I've been here 4 weeks, so any answer I give, I don't want to pretend to know things I don't know. I have not been engaged in deep conversation with the leadership team in the last 4 weeks about 5 years from now. There's a sense in which, I've said this to several people recently, I always view life as sort of going down a long pathway, and about every 50 feet there's a veil. You can see through that veil to the next 50 feet, but beyond that, it's hard to see what's beyond that next veil. It's just been the story of my life, my career, my personal life in many kinds of ways. That's made it kind of exciting. That's not a reason not to look at 5 years down the line. You can't plan your life if you just look down the next veil. I tried to outline a few things in here, I hope I did, about where I'd like to see the school moving programmatically, for example. I think it's, in terms of size, that specific question. Over the weekend, coming back from taking my son back to college, and I got caught in a traffic jam for about an hour and a half on the other side of Rochester, so I had a long time to do some reading that had been sitting in my briefcase, and some of it was were kind of history of the school. And I was struck by how many changes the school has been through. This school, which was 2 schools, has been through over the years. There's a gentleman here who used to live in the farmhouse when he was a kid, graduated, 1954. And he and I were talking earlier about the fact that we've seen some of these very things before. The school is, up and down in terms of size. I don't think there is an optimal size for schools, but I think we'll learn something about whether the size will be next year is the right size. I don't think we intend, though, to be a smaller school. I think our intention is to grow again. And I think we can do that by marketing ourselves effectively and aggressively, and hoping that the economy turns around a little bit in a variety of things. So I would say, whatever the capacity of the campus is, it's not what the size of the school should be. That's sort of a general 4 weeks in statement. Yeah.
So just to follow up on that, if it's not fair, because you said you haven't had time, but I realize that's one shot. But the lower school, my son's in the lower school, and I agree with you, I'm saying the exact same thing, the lower school is so important. It clearly needs a lot of attention in terms of enrollment. It suffers, it's clearly suffering, it has suffered. So, as you mentioned, we work with them, I mean, where will the focus be in trying to increase enrollment in the lower school? Because it feeds, right, all the way from pre-K to 10, all the way up into the, because once you're here, you drink the Kool-Aid. I know we're all here for about 20 minutes.
I'm just going to invest this $20,000 once or twice, right? The lower school is important to us for all the reasons I said. Educational reasons, but you said earlier, that we have to do a lot less recruitment for middle and upper school if we have more enrollment for lower school. I don't think we have a magic bullet on that. Is your son in the 4th grade? Third. Okay. I saw a child who could be your son. He was brilliant. I think we're exploring a variety of marketing possibilities. I think we need to exploit some marketing expertise, especially someone who understands education, and especially someone who understands lower school education. And I think that's why I mentioned Don Sala and Tom Moore. We're willing to do that. Tom Moore came and spent several days here. He stayed in my guest room, and I took him out to eat. And he didn't cost us anything, and I'm sure we can do that with others. So I think the key is to be open to new ideas, to be open to any way of increasing our fund. We start with a lot of people who require a smaller, people who apply a smaller number of windows were accepted, and then a smaller number of people who actually come to your school. So we need to make that top part be much larger. And some of us are not convinced that we have tested out the market to its fullest extent. This fall we had some people working hard to keep the pre-K and K open, and so they tested a number of markets, and I think we'll find that there are other things out there than we looked at. Because I'm not only due to the PH, but due to Syracuse, I'm still learning about this thing, but I'm learning fast. And you can bet that that's going to be a major difference. I'm really going to be pushing.
My name is Dave Rennes. My daughter and we met in the CPL story. And first of all, thank you for making that visit.
What's the first name?
Anya. It's but it says a lot about your commitment to the lower school generally, that you made those visits this morning and made an impression on her. So thank you. And I'm wondering if you could talk briefly about the process or timeline for hiring lower school.
Did everybody hear that question? Questions about the process of hiring a lower school. Complicated question. In my perfect world, in a school that's lower school, middle school, upper school, you would guess, based on what I've already said, that you would have a division head in lower school. When I arrived, almost the first day I arrived, I found that the lower school had taken another position. And since I already knew her and was already impressed, and had become even more impressed, it was disappointing. Knowing that, however, and knowing that we probably can't afford 3 division heads, my hope is to have someone who heads lower and middle school at the same time. That is in process, and I won't be talking about it in public because it's in process, and there are people involved, but I'm working hard to find someone who has some knowledge of lower school curriculum, not just middle school curriculum. One of the people I'm talking to works in the middle school, but has a degree in lower school education. And Sarah Lynn Long is eager to help whoever takes that over in any way she can. And I will make sure that whoever we hire have resources, local resources available to them. I'm confident. Knowing what I know, I would put my child in lower school next year. But you already heard what I said, I'd like to just go back to lower school over and over and over again. Any other questions? Teachers know that there's something called wait time. You ask me this question, you wait. And then there comes a moment where everybody's supposed to be uncomfortable, so we will go past that. Well, I will be here. First of all, let me thank you for coming. I know there's more from here. This is more up here. And this is not the best time of day to be out away from home, but I appreciate your coming out and listening to what I have to say. I hope you have a response to it. You will get that to me. I'm always eager to hear people's ideas. If you have questions, please stick around and I'll be happy to talk. But thank you very much.